Once a quarter, we get an update from Pearl Abyss Corporation. They're a Korean game development company that owns CCP Games, the makers of EVE Online. And that's a great time because it's the only time we see financials from them about the revenue in EVE Online and a little bit of tidbits here and there on the profitability. The only other time we get info on financials, on the financials of CCP, is in April when we get their essentially tax financial filings with the Icelandic equivalent of the IRS. So exciting time. This came out today, and that's one of the reasons I decided to stream today, because I want to cover these as close to the time it comes out as possible. Another person who covers these is Crota, who you all know from our community. He, by the way, he already has a nice write-up. Sorry for blinding you with this again, but you guys know what this looks like in dark mode, okay? You don't want this either. So this is Markets for ISK. I'll post that into chat right here, all right? And he has a nice little write-up of this. I will cover some of the same points, but Crota, certainly go check out his blog. Now, let's talk about Q3 financials. And let's start with this right here. Actually, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I don't block it with my face. So overall, the first page is about what has happened in Q3 for Pearl Abyss. And so we see a bunch of stuff on Black Desert that we as EVE players don't care that much about. But yes, they have a new expansion, whatever. They were at TwitchCon. And there was a Heidel Ball, I guess it's their convention, right? Their fan convention, maybe? I don't know. That's a strange name, Heidel Ball. It sounds like somebody is trying to make a German word, but didn't quite know German. But that was probably, I'm probably way off. So, for EVE Online, what they're saying that there was a 20th anniversary of EVE FanFest, which we know because I and many of you were there or they followed that on Twitch. Now, in terms of new IP, they're talking about the announcement of EVE Vanguard and EVE Galaxy Conquest, which were announced at FanFest, and which for them in an investor presentation just means, you know, they're pointing you towards innovation, towards new content, which is always exciting for investors in the community. So the other thing they're talking about is new IP Crimson Desert, which is their big new AAA title. And they were at Gamescom in August, and they announced that it was coming out in 2024. And in this call, they had to announce that it is actually not coming in 2024. They've moved it to 2025, and they've moved the other games they're working on to 2026 and beyond, which is the worst news for investors that you can imagine. And as a result, if you look at their stock dropped 8% today. All right. This is based on the financials, but also mainly based on their pushing back of titles into 2025 and 2026. So that's not what investors want to hear. 8% is a massive drop in stock price. Essentially, that's an 8% drop in the worth of the company. It's pretty terrible. All right. So if we go here, this is where it becomes interesting because we're looking at their revenue. So yes, they did recover a little bit of their revenue. They had a terrible Q2. All right, terrible. It was 78 billion Korean won. They're now at 84 billion. So slight comeback. But if we look at their operating profit, they have an operating profit of 2%, which is pretty bad. So it's essentially break even after operating profit, and there's not that much left over. Now, they do have a 15 billion net profit, so that's an 18% net profit. But that comes from basically other income and income from financial activities. So this is them buying, selling assets. They could be buying, selling shares in companies or cryptocurrency or whatever. So this, this shows that either they're they're covering up their operating profit with some financial moves, or they're just much better right now. They're much better on the financial investment side than they are in making money from developing their own games. But this is overall not good news for their game development operations, and that's why the market, that is one reason why the stock price dropped 8%. All right. Now, this is where it becomes interesting for us as EVE players, because here is the only chart where we can see the revenue for EVE Online. And the revenue for EVE Online is 16 billion Korean won. And you can see that it's down from the last quarter from 20 billion. They had a fantastic Q2. All right, that was the last expansion. That was, some good sales, right? Some good sales. Player numbers are also up in terms of raw player numbers logged in. Now we're going to talk about Omega subscriptions in a second, because Crota's done a rough analysis there. But essentially, what we have to compare to discount for. Or to account for seasonal effects, we have to compare to last year's Q3. And so even if we compare to last year's Q3, we're going from 19 to 16. Now you could say that there might be currency effects in there, but there really aren't. So if you look at Crota's blog, for example, he's done the overview of currency fluctuations between Q3 2022 and Q3 2023. Now, dollar might be up, euro, or versus the dollar might be up, versus euro and pound might be down. But overall, this isn't if you consider that a whole bunch of players are in the US and a whole bunch of players are in Europe, this is essentially a wash. So if you're looking at these numbers right here, there's certainly no explanation of in currency conversion. Now, before I came on the show live today, I looked at my video for Q3 2022. So what did I say in Q3 2022? And that video, if you go back, it's very funny, because I said about that quarter that those numbers are much better than the game is. Than the game state is, because if you go back to Q3 2022, player numbers were terrible. It was a low time in login. The only thing that we had in Q3 that was big was Plexageddon. So that huge Plex sale where they converted a whole bunch of Plex into deferred revenue into revenue by having massive Plex sales. That's what happened in Q3 last year. So what you could say is that this was Plexageddon, massive sale, which was a good financial move for their revenue numbers. Those effects weren't immediately realized. Those effects by everyone subscribing with Plex for long periods of time. That meant that they were realizing revenue over this quarter and following quarters. So one potential explanation for what is going on here is that a lot of people during Plexageddon, they subscribed for a year or so with Plex, and possibly that is now running out and those people aren't resubscribing. Now, player numbers are good. And yeah, Crota in chat is saying that was the 30% price increase, but also Plexageddon right after that. Right, so the price increase, I think, was in Q2, actually, in May, I think, Crota. Oh yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah, Q2 was price increase, Q3 was Plexageddon. And so, who knows? But right now, player numbers right here are much lower, they're much higher than they were in Q3 2022. So so this is from a player number perspective surprising, but then again, it might just be that people are subscribing, that they lost a lot of subscribers after the sub price increase, that a lot of people subscribed with Plex in the aftermath, and now they're just not being able to convert the player numbers into revenue. So lowest quarterly revenue over the last 5 quarters. And so that's not, that's not nothing. It's real. One interesting fact, if you look at their operating expenses, let's look at their headcount, right? Their headcount in development has gone down steadily. So if you're looking at quarter over quarter or year over year, it's 15% less development staff. So if you're considering that they are developing major AAA titles, right, and they're pushing those back, it's not crazy to assume that they have to cut costs because their financials aren't great, but that's also at the same time pushing back their new releases. So they're in a very tough spot right now, because in order to release your titles on time, you have to invest. But if your financials are bad, you're lacking the market capital to do that, right? So this is not a good time for Pearl Abyss overall. The net Crota says in chat, the net effect of this is that Pearl Abyss profits remain reliant on Black Desert and EVE Online, and so profits will be very small at best. Black Desert continues to be in decline, so Pearl Abyss could see losses. Yep. Good summary. Thank you, Kiakti and Funink, for rating with your 15 viewers. And Funink, or Kiakti, I checked by. You didn't see my chat comment earlier, but I wanted to join your fleet, but I was late. I'm sorry. And then financials happened, and I had to go live. And thank you, Crota, for gifting Funink sub. But essentially, so let's look at the Q4 outlook. So they're talking EVE expansion, Havoc. We know that is coming, and they're also talking Vanguard and Galaxy Quest as IP expansions for EVE Online. So yeah, as Crota says, certainly more focus now on Black Desert Online and EVE Online if they're pushing out the others. But EVE and Black Desert aren't really cutting it right now in terms of big profit makers for EVE Online, for Pearl Abyss. Sorry. All right. Yeah. So if you want to understand why I was saying other income and financial income from financial activities, you can see it here. Their total revenue 84 billion won, and then the expenses 82, and so their operating profit at 4% is very, very low. Yeah. Then they have financial income of 9 million, so from investments that they're doing, assets they're buying and selling, and then they have this other income, which is just we don't know. Has Pearl Abyss recovered their initial investment in CCP yet? I mean, that depends on what you're talking about in recovery, right? I mean, they certainly haven't in terms of getting the value of CCP, because the value of CCP has dropped a lot since they bought CCP. So as Crota is saying in chat, they had to. It was like 3 quarters ago that they had a huge write down of. Or 2 quarters ago, they had a huge write-down on their balance sheet because the value of CCP had dropped so much from the purchase of CCP. So yeah, PA bought CCP like 5 years ago. Rasta. Yeah. So that's it. That's it. We'll talk about the MER next.